Karen Whitmore pressed her face against her kitchen window, so hard that her nose left a smudge on the glass. Across the courtyard, the Johnson children were having the audacity to enjoy themselves in their own backyard pool, laughing, splashing, and committing what she considered the ultimate crime, being loud after 10 a.m. on a Saturday. "Maso," 8-year-old Tommy Johnson yelled. "Kill allo," his sister Emma shrieked back. Karen's eye twitched. She grabbed her phone and speed-dialed the HOA hotline, a number she'd memorized 3 complaints ago. "Willowbrook HOA, this is Janet speaking. This is Karen Whitmore at 1247 Maple Drive, and I'm reporting a noise violation." Karen interrupted, her voice reaching decibels that could probably be heard 3 houses down. "The Johnson children are splashing excessively loud, and I demand immediate action." 20 minutes later, HOA President Bob Martinez stood on Karen's doorstep, clipboard in hand, and wearing the expression of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Karen had already prepared a 3-page typed complaint, complete with timestamps and a hand-drawn diagram of splash trajectory patterns. "Karen," Bob sighed, "kids playing in their pool isn't exactly a violation. Section 4.7 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that excessive noise disrupting the peaceful enjoyment of neighboring properties is prohibited," Karen recited, thrusting the papers at him. "I've documented 17 separate incidents of unauthorized pool festivities this month." Bob glanced at the meticulous log. "This says they played Marco Polo for 12 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon." Exactly, 12 minutes of acoustic assault. What Karen didn't know was that Bob had been fielding complaints about her complaints. The Johnsons weren't the first family she targeted. There was the Great Wind Chime War of 2023 with the elderly Patels, and the Dandelion incident that had driven the young couple at the end of the street to consider moving. But Karen had allies on the HOA board. Margaret Chen, the vice president, shared Karen's vision of a properly regulated community, and together they'd managed to push through increasingly strict interpretations of the bylaws. "Fine," Bob said, defeated. "I'll send them a warning letter." Karen smiled triumphantly. "And I want a follow-up inspection scheduled." "Karen," Bobby. Her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "As a dues-paying resident and active community member, I have rights. Unless you want me to escalate this to the regional HOA office." Bob knew that threat wasn't empty. Karen had connections. Her brother-in-law worked in municipal code enforcement, and she'd successfully gotten 3 different ice cream trucks banned from the neighborhood for operating without proper permits. That evening, 12-year-old Emma Johnson sat on her bed, staring at the formal letter that had been hand-delivered to her parents. The headed paper made it seem official and scary. "Warn MT. XCSI recreational noise violation." "Mom," Emma called downstairs. "What does decibel monitoring mean?" Lisa Johnson's heart sank as she read over her daughter's shoulder. The letter demanded they maintain reasonable noise levels during all pool activities and threatened fines starting at $500 for repeat violations. "It means," Lisa said carefully, "that Mrs. Whitmore is trying to stop you from having fun in your own backyard." But Karen was just getting started. That night, she'd researched municipal noise ordinances, purchased a professional-grade decibel meter online, and began planning what she privately called Operation Quiet Zone. She transformed previous victories into HOA legend: the Chen family's basketball hoop removed for property value depreciation, the Williams family's garden gnomes relocated for aesthetic violations. This time would be different, though. This time, she'd caught the attention of someone who wouldn't back down as easily as her previous targets. As Karen drifted off to sleep, she had no idea that Mike Johnson, Army veteran and civil rights attorney, was downstairs researching HOA legal precedents and drafting a letter of his own. One that would challenge not just this complaint, but the entire pattern of harassment that had been building in Willowbrook for months. The war for summer fun was about to begin, and Karen had picked the wrong family to mess with. Karen woke up Monday morning feeling victorious. She'd spent Sunday positioning her new decibel meter strategically by her fence, ready to document every splash, every laugh, every unauthorized moment of childhood joy from the Johnson pool. At exactly 7 a.m., she called Bob Martinez again. The device registered 78 decibels yesterday at 2:47 p.m., she announced smugly. That's well above acceptable residential levels. Karen, that's quieter than normal conversation. The law is the law, Bob. What Karen didn't expect was the knock on her door 2 hours later. Mike Johnson stood on her porch, not with anger, but with a thick manila folder and the kind of calm confidence that comes from 20 years of military service. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Mike Johnson. I believe we need to talk. Karen opened the door just wide enough to speak through the chain lock. If this is about your children's noise violations, actually, it's about yours. Mike held up a professional sound meter report. I had a certified acoustics engineer test our pool area yesterday. Peak levels, 65 decibels. That's quieter than your voice when you called my kids neighborhood menaces from your back porch last week. Karen's confident expression faltered. I have video. Mike's voice remained steady. Ring doorbell cameras are wonderful things. The footage shows you shouting at children for 15 minutes straight, with your voice registering consistently above 85 decibels. That's actually a noise violation. You can't record me on my own property. Actually, I can record anything visible from a public space, including sound that carries beyond your property line. Mike smiled politely. I'm a civil rights attorney, Mrs. Whitmore. I specialize in harassment cases. For the first time in years, Karen was speechless. Here's what's going to happen, Mike continued. You're going to stop harassing my family and every other family in this neighborhood. In return, I won't file a formal complaint about your pattern of discriminatory enforcement, targeting families with children. Karen slammed the door, but the damage was done. That afternoon, she discovered Mike had been busy. He'd spoken to the Patels about the wind chime incident, the Williams family about their garden gnomes, and the young couple about the dandelion cetaceans. More importantly, he'd researched Karen's own property. The certified letter arrived Tuesday. Via security camera positioning. Karen read aloud, her voice shaking. Your surveillance equipment violates HOA privacy guidelines by monitoring neighboring properties. She'd installed the cameras to watch for violations. Now they were violations themselves. Wednesday brought another letter. Violation notice. Landscaping non-compliance. Your hedge height exceeds the 42-inch maximum outlined in Section 8.3. Thursday. Violation and whether there were commercial delivery trucks visiting your address during restricted hours, suggesting prohibited home business activity. Karen's Etsy shop selling handmade HOA compliance guides was technically against the rules. By Friday, Karen sat in her living room surrounded by violation notices, her own weapons turned against her. Her carefully maintained property, her pride and joy, was suddenly riddled with infractions she'd never noticed because she'd been so focused on everyone else's. The phone rang. Bob Martinez. Karen, we need to meet. The board's received some concerning information about selective enforcement. Bob, this is obviously retaliation. Karen, his voice was tired. Mike Johnson presented documentation of your complaints over the past 2 years. 93% targeted families with children. 0 complaints filed against single residents or childless couples with similar or worse violations. Karen's throat went dry. The regional office is asking questions. They're sending an investigator next week to review our enforcement patterns. If they find evidence of discrimination, Bob paused. Karen, they could dissolve our board and place the HOA under external management. That evening, Karen stood at her kitchen window again. The Johnson children were in their pool, playing the same games, making the same joyful noise. But this time, instead of reaching for her phone, she found herself remembering her own childhood summers, long days at her grandmother's house, splashing in an above-ground pool while adults complained about the noise. When had she become the adult who complained? Her reflection was interrupted by a soft knock. Through the window, she saw Emma Johnson holding a plate of cookies. "My mom sent these," the 12-year-old said when Karen opened the door. "She says maybe we got off on the wrong foot." Karen stared at the child she'd spent weeks trying to silence. Emma's bathing suit was still damp, her hair chlorine-scented, her smile genuinely hopeful. "We're not trying to be mean, Mrs. Whitmore," Emma continued. "We just want to swim in our pool." For the first time in months, Karen's anger cracked. Behind it was something she hadn't felt in years: shame. But as Emma walked away, Karen noticed something else: a black sedan parked across the street, and a woman with a clipboard taking notes. The regional investigator had arrived early, and she'd just witnessed Karen accepting what could be interpreted as a peace offering from the family she'd been harassing. The game was far from over, but Karen was no longer sure she was playing for the right side.